Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video, we are going to look at how to create a Jenkins ArgoCD GitOps CI/CD pipeline. And so for this project, you have a code in our repository on GitHub. I'll use a Jenkins container to check out the code. And for the CI, we build a Docker image out of the code using a Docker file in the repository. Then we will scan the Docker image using Trivy. Now, after scanning, you push the image to DockerHub. Now, after the image has been saved on DockerHub, I will use Jenkins container to set up a GitHub webhook. Now, this will ensure that whenever you do git push, the whole process builds from beginning to end. And then I will use ArgoCD as my GitOps tool to do the continuous delivery, where whenever any changes are made to our Kubernetes manifest inside our GitHub repository, this ArgoCD will take over and synchronize the application that's deployed on the Minikube cluster. But please note that the Minikube cluster that we have will be running on a Docker container. Okay, so it's not a Minikube cluster that uses a VM. This will be a Minikube cluster that is going to be running as a Docker container. So please join me as we go from beginning to end on this project, and like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, at this stage, let's look at how we're gonna. Okay, at this stage, let's look at the code that we're gonna use. So currently in the GitHub repository, Jenkins-ArgoCD-GitOps, we have an application, app.js, with certain supporting files, package-log and package.json files. Yeah, this is a simple application. All that it does is it prints "Hello world, welcome to iQuant's YouTube channel." Now this application runs on port 3000. We have a Docker file. You will use this to build a Docker image for our app. The application is Node.js based, so I'm using the Alpine Node.js image as a base image. I will set /app as the working directory. I'll copy the package files here, and then I will install npm dependencies. Then I'll copy everything else that remains. Then I'll expose it on port 3000. Remember, that's the port for the application 3000. And then we use npm start. This is the command to start the app. Now, because we are going to build a pipeline out of this, I'm going to use Jenkins pipeline. So I have a Jenkins file here, which is basically a skeleton. So you first check out our code. You install node dependencies or npm dependencies, build a Docker image. We'll do a Trivy scan of the image. Then we push the image to DockerHub. We will install ArgoCD CLI, and then we will apply the Kubernetes manifest and sync the app with ArgoCD. And this will show whether it's a success or failure. Just show the logs. So this is just a skeleton. We will fill in the commands when we start working on it. And then you see we have a directory here called manifests. Now this contains the Kubernetes manifest files. I have a deployment here with 2 replicas listening on port 3000. So the image that we will build, I'll give it the same name, or if you give it a different name, just replace this with the new name that you give it. And then I have a service.yaml here, which will expose the app for us. Again, the target port is 3000. All right, take a run for the entire project. Okay, now at this point, we will look at how to set up our instance. So I'm going to launch instance, which will be an Ubuntu instance for our project. I'll call it GitOps, and this is going to be an Ubuntu instance. For the instance type, I'm going to use T3 medium, just so we have enough CPU and memory. And for the key pair, I'll create a new key pair. I'll give it the same name as our instance. Call it GitOps. Create key. And I will select it and it's automatically downloaded here. For storage, I'll give it about 30 gigabytes of storage. So far, everything else is default launch instance. Okay, go back to instances. And this is our instance running. When you select it, this is our public IP address. Now, let's cd into the downloads directory. This is where our key pair is. I'll do chmod 600. And the key pair is GitOps. Then I'll use ssh-i gitops.pem Ubuntu. The IP address is right here. Copy it. Press enter. Yes. Okay. And we are inside the server. Clear the screen. Of course, first things first, do sudo apt update and upgrade. Okay, that's done. Let's clear the screen here. Next, go to the GitHub repo. This is our repository. Now copy the repo link and clone it into my server here. Now, when we're doing that, you'll be asked for a password. So we need a token. So before I even clone it, I'll first go to my account, go to settings, scroll all the way down to developer settings, personal access token classic. Now generate a new token, which is a classic one. And I'll call it GitOps token. Let's keep it as GitOps. 7 days. I'll select repo, workflow. Now you can select as many as you want. I'm just selecting randomly. Generate token. So this is our token. Copy it and save it somewhere safe. I've saved it somewhere safe. And so now we can go back to the repository. This is the repo. By the way, the repository link is in the description below under this video. So you can go here and copy the clone link. Go to your terminal and you do git clone. Paste the link there. Press enter. Okay, it's cloned it. ls, and that is our repository. I'm going to cd into it. See the contents of the directories are here. First, let me clear the screen here. We're gonna install some softwares. So because we need to use Minikube and Jenkins that are both running on containers, and by containers I mean Docker containers, we need to have Docker installed. So on your browser, just go to Docker installation, install Docker on Ubuntu. You'll get all the commands that you need. These are the commands right here. Copy it and run them one by one. Yes, the first part is done. Next is this. Copy this. Let's clear the screen. Paste this. Now add the -y. This is to say yes to any prompt. So press enter. That's also done. I'm going to use sudo to run docker hello world. Let me clear the screen first. You see hello from Docker. So that's good. Next, we don't want to use sudo to run Docker all the time. So you need to do some post installation setup. Go all the way down. Go to post install steps. First, create a Docker group. Most of the time, it's automatically created, so it already exists. That's fine. Now add the user to the Docker group. Next, normally you may have to log out and log back in to reevaluate the group membership, but you can also run this command to do that instead of logging out and logging back in. And so now if you run the docker run hello world without the sudo, like we did up here, it should still give us the same results because we've added the user to the Docker group. Next few things, I'm going to enable Docker service. This will start Docker as soon as this server is booted. Just run them. All right. And that's it for Docker installation. So I can clear the screen here. Now if I do systemctl status Docker, you see Docker is active and running. Use Control-C to exit. If I do Docker ps, there's no process running. Docker ps-a, the only two processes that are exited are the hello world commands that we ran. The first one was with sudo, the other one was without sudo. So Docker is successfully installed. Next, let's install our Minikube. Go to your browser, go to install Minikube. This is the Minikube official page, and the installation is right here. We have a Linux system, 64-bit. You can use the binary. Okay, so these are the commands for installing Minikube. Copy them. Go to your terminal, paste it here, and press enter. Now, just like that, Minikube is installed. If I do Minikube status, see that there is no profile to view because we've not created any cluster using the Minikube. Since that's the case, I'm gonna do Minikube start, and this is gonna start Minikube, but Minikube uses hypervisors, and the only hypervisor or supporting software for our Minikube on this particular server is a Docker that we just installed. So Minikube start is the same as running Minikube start -- drivers or driver equal Docker. If you specify this or if you don't, it will still be the same thing. So press this, enter, and you see that it is using Docker driver. Give it a few seconds and it will finish creating the cluster. Okay, that's done. But we want to use kubectl to interact with our cluster. So let's install kubectl as well. So install kubectl on your browser. All right, and we are installing it on Linux. I'm going to use a call command. Just copy and run them. Copy this. Press enter. Validate the binaries. By the way, there isn't only one way of doing this. We can actually use snap since we are on a Ubuntu server. And you find that down here. Where is it? Right here. Now this is only supported on Ubuntu and some other Linux distributions. This is pretty easy, so let's use this instead. Now you need sudo for this, so sudo snap install kubectl classic. This will download and install everything for you in a single command. So if I do kubectl version client, that's our kubectl successfully installed. If you prefer to, you can install using the binaries with the apt command here, but it's still okay. I'm gonna clear the screen. But first off, let's do Minikube status. See, it's currently running. Kubectl get nodes. So our Minikube is created a single node, kubectl cluster-info. This is the URL for our Minikube cluster. Our Minikube is successfully installed, and we can interact with the Minikube using kubectl. By the way, if you run docker ps, you should see that Minikube, as you see here, this is the Minikube cluster, and it's using the Minikube click-based image. That's the image that is running currently as our Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so it's showing up here as a Docker container. That's why when you do docker ps, you see it here. And this is because Minikube used Docker as the driver when we created it. Okay. Okay. Now at this point, we are gonna set up our Jenkins server using the Jenkins container. So we already have our Kubernetes cluster running on a container right here. Now before we set up the Jenkins, let's do docker network ls. And you see that whenever you create a Minikube cluster, it also creates a network called Minikube that the cluster runs on. When we create our Jenkins server, which is gonna run in a container, that has to also run on this same network. Also has to be on the same Minikube network. And so the command for running our container will look something like this. I'll paste the command here. So use docker run, and our name for the container is Jenkins. Port 8080 for this Jenkins UI. Port 50,000 is for any Jenkins agents. In our case, we will not really set up any agents, so you won't really use the port 50,000. By the way, if you want to know how to set up Jenkins agents on my channel, I have multiple videos here for setting up Jenkins agents. This is using a container as a Jenkins agent. Here, it's using Kubernetes pods as Jenkins build agents and so forth. Okay, so you can look that up. And then I'm gonna mount the Docker socket of our server to that of the container that we are gonna create. Now, remember we installed Docker on our server, on our Ubuntu server. This Jenkins container is gonna be used to build a Docker image as well. Okay, so Docker will also be accessible inside of that Jenkins container. Now, to build Docker images with that, you need to mount the Docker socket of the container to the local host or the server that you're actually working on. That's why we have this. We do the same for the Docker binaries, basically the installation files. And I'm using user root, and this is the Docker group ID. Remember, we added our user to Docker group. So this also needs access to that via the Docker group ID or Docker GID. And you can see here is the network Minikube that we are trying to put on. This is the Minikube network. And the image I'm using is Jenkins LTS, long-term support. So press enter, and that should start your container in a few seconds. All right, so that's done. I'm gonna clear the screen. Now, when I do docker ps, you see that now we have two containers. We have Minikube container here, and then we have the Jenkins container right there. And both of them are running on the same network, Minikube. Let's go to our EC2 instance. Go to security, select it, go to security. Go to the security groups. And for the inbound rules, we need to add some ports here. The first one is port 8080. This is the port for Jenkins UI. You can use my IP or anywhere IP is still fine. This is for Jenkins UI. 50,000. This is for Jenkins agents. Save changes. So we've made our changes. Now, when I do docker logs, And our Jenkins container name is Jenkins. See that the Jenkins server is fully booted, so it's completed initialization. So when I copy the public IP address, let's close some tabs here. So I'll paste the public IP colon 8080, press enter. That's the Jenkins. Initial admin password is right here. Copy this. Paste it here, continue. Don't save it. Install suggested plugins. Now this will take some few minutes, so I'll pause the video and come back once it's ready. Give it some username. I'll just give it admin everywhere. Admin. Now the email, it has to look like an email. So I'll use admin@admin.com. Save and continue. And save and finish. Start using Jenkins. So that's our Jenkins UI. Now you see something up here. Now, this is about using Jenkins build agents for your build jobs in Jenkins, which is exactly what I showed you here, using Docker image or Docker container or Kubernetes pass for that. I don't want to use that in this project, so I'll just dismiss this, but you can set up agents or cloud for that. Next, let's go to plugins. By the way, if you go to the dashboard, go to Manage Jenkins, plugins, available. Let's install some more plugins. Now the plugins I'll install Docker, this one, and Docker pipeline. I'm installing this because we are going to build a Docker image using the Docker file that we have right here. Next, I'll install Node.js, this one. Now that's because our application is a Node.js based application. If you remember from the Jenkins file, we have to install dependencies here. Maybe we need Node for that. And then Kubernetes. As you know, we already have the manifest here. Even though we are going to use ArgoCD to deploy it, we still need Kubernetes for pipeline. So select this, and you can go ahead and install it. So it's installed successfully. Terminal, clear the screen. Docker PS. Let's do a restart. So Docker restart. The Jenkins container is Jenkins. If I refresh this page, take a few seconds. Username admin, password admin, press enter. Okay, so we've successfully restarted the container. Next, I'll log into the Jenkins container and install some stuff in there. Docker exec-it, that's interactive mode. And the Jenkins container is called Jenkins, and I'll use bash login. Once we are in, I'll run the command docker exec-it Jenkins. That is the same command that we ran here, but now I'm using this command to ping the Minikube container. That's Minikube. And you see that it says ping is not available, or there's no such file. So that means ping is not installed on the Jenkins container. So let's do apt-get update our container. Now let's install ping, which is iputils-ping. I'm gonna install npm as well, /y. Press enter. So that is done. So if I do npm -v, that's npm installed. When I do ping version, now this may show temporary failure, but that doesn't mean ping is not installed successfully. If I do ping, that's C5 1.1.1.1, This is, I believe, Google, the DNS for Google. Try pinging it to see, and you see there are some packets of data coming in. So ping is correctly installed. Okay, I'm gonna exit the container. So let's clear the screen. Docker PS. So we are out of the container now. Let's do a restart. So Docker restart. Container is Jenkins. And on our dashboard, let's refresh the UI. Admin, press enter. Okay, so that is Jenkins. Next, let's check out our code from GitHub repository here into our Jenkins CI/CD. Now, first, to do that, settings right here. Developer settings, token classic. Remember, we created a token here for GitHub. So I'm going to use that to create a credential in my Jenkins and then use that to check out the code from GitHub. So first, manage Jenkins, credentials, global, add credentials. We are using username and password. Our GitHub username is the one on top here, which is icon C. The password is a token that we created earlier. Remember, I asked you to copy it somewhere safe. You won't see it anymore, and so I'm gonna use the one that I copied earlier. Paste it in here for password, and this is GitOps token for GitHub. I'll use the same for the description. Create. So that is our credential. Let's go back to the dashboard. Create a new pipeline. Call it GitOps pipeline. Okay. The GitOps pipeline. Go all the way down. Pipeline script from SCM, which is from our Git repo. Select Git. The repo URL. Go to the root of the directory or the repository. Click code and copy this link. Paste it here. And select the credentials we just created. The branch we are working on is main. See main right there, main branch. And our pipeline script is called Jenkins file. That's exact spelling. So Jenkins file. Now open the pipeline syntax here to generate the code. So let's apply and save this for now. And then let's generate the syntax. Click this and select Git. Paste the repo URL we copied here one more time. Paste it here. Branch is still main. Credential is that. Generates pipeline syntax. Select this and copy it. So in our Jenkins file, paste it in here like that. And I'll save this script. Now git add, git commit -m. Just check out the code. Git push, username icon C, and then the token that we created for GitHub. Paste it there as a password, and that should push your changes. Refresh this. Go to the Jenkins file, and this is how your code looks. All right, so on this page, you can hit build now. To refresh this a little bit, so it's a success. Click on this, and you should see that the checkout was successful. All right, now the whole thing is a success, but you have to fill in the commands or the code for all the other steps. You can close this tab. All right. Now at this stage, we are gonna install our dependencies using npm. So let's clear the screen here. CI Jenkins file, and I'm gonna update the step. Now remember, when we install the plugins, I did install Node.js. So I need to set it up. So manage Jenkins, go to tools. Because we installed the plugin, you should see Node.js here. This is it. Add Node.js. And the name, I'll give it Node capital JS. You install it automatically. Apply, save. With that, I'll do some updates to our pipeline script here. First, I'll create a new section called tools. And inside this tools, I'll add our Node.js, and the name I gave it is Node capital JS. That's the first thing. Remember, when we went to manage Jenkins, we went to tools. So that's why I used tools there. And this is the name that I gave it, which is why you see Node capital JS. Right. Next step is to install the npm dependencies. Just gonna remove this. Now use shell to run npm install. Save this. Now, by the way, remember that we already installed npm inside the container, inside the Jenkins container. So we don't have to do that anymore. It's already done. So when I push changes, this is npm install. Push the changes to GitHub. That's done. Refresh. And this is how the code looks. We've updated it and we've added it as a tool. All right. Now in Jenkins, all of this is done. So apply and save. Go to the dashboard. This is our job. Build now. The checkout is done. Did the npm install here. We found some vulnerabilities, but still okay. Then the rest, just skipping over or just running the echo commands. So it's success. The npm dependencies have been installed. Okay, so at this stage, let me clear the screen for now. VI Jenkins file. Next thing is to build our Docker image right here. So to build our Docker image, remember we already installed Docker as a plugin. Now, since Docker is already installed as a plugin, let's go to manage Jenkins, just like we did with the npm. Go to tools. Let's go all the way down. You should see Docker installation here. Add. Let's give it the name. I'll call it Docker. Install automatically. This will install from docker.com. Apply and save. Let's go back to our dashboard. Now in our pipeline project, go to configure. Now in here, remember the pipeline syntax, have it here. Now since we installed the plugin, you go to global variable reference. You see Docker plugin and the commands to use for Docker down here. We want to build a Docker image. So we are going to do Docker dot whatever that's here. Okay. So to build is build. That's right here. So our command is going to be docker.build. And then we provide the arguments inside of it. Okay. So to build, So I'll do docker.build, and then inside here you provide the name colon the tag that you want to use. All right, I don't want to use just any name, so I'll go up here and define an environment block. Now you use this to define environment variables in your Jenkins pipeline script. So the environment variables that I'm gonna create here, docker_hub _repo. Now this will have some name, which is a DockerHub repository. Now, currently I'm logged into my DockerHub repository here. Okay, my account is icon-c. You can find several images I've built in here. I'm gonna use this icon-c / icon-app repository. If you go in there, I already have some tags in there. Still doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna use that. And then the tag is gonna be latest. I'll use that for my environment variable. So I'll go back here, paste this in here without the tag, just the repo name and app name. So I'll go back down, and the name is gonna be this right here. Copy this. You want to insert an environment variable inside your code. You use the $ and curly braces with the variable inside it, colon tag. You can also use an environment variable for the tag. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use latest. So this will build a Docker image, and we'll name it icon-c / icon-app latest. Let's save this. Git add, git commit. This is Docker image, build, git push, username, the password, paste it here. These changes have been saved. Refresh this. That's the environment variable. That's the docker.build step. Now in here, you can apply and save this. Build now. So the checkout and npm install is fine. Now you see that it's building a Docker image. Now this image is being built from the Docker file that is inside our repository. And that is a success. And that is how it builds the Docker image. And the Docker image is icon-c / icon-app latest. And it's successfully built. All right. Now for the next stage, let's clear the screen. GI Jenkins file. The next stage is to scan the Docker image that we just built. So I'll just get rid of this code. If you like, you can add it onto this. I just want to get rid of this sh, and I'll paste the command in here. So, okay. So I repeated the sh. Let me get rid of this. Right. So we're using Trivy severities that we want the Trivy to catch. And if it doesn't pass it, it should stop. It shouldn't progress. And this is a scan of an image, right? We want the results in a tabular form, right? And the output to be sent to the file trivyscan report.txt. And the image we are scanning is docker_hub_repo latest, which is exactly the image that we are building right here. Now, even though we've updated it in here, we have to check our container to be sure that Trivy is installed in there. Let's save our code for now. Then we'll do docker ps. Let's do docker exec -it. Our container is Jenkins using bash. Let's do Trivy version. So Trivy is not installed. Now to install Trivy, go to your browser, go to Trivy install, go to the main website for Trivy. There are several ways of installing it. I prefer to use the script, which is right here, just a single line of code. I'll copy this and then go to my terminal. Inside the Jenkins container, I'll paste the command in here, press enter. And just like that, Trivy is installed. Now if I run Trivy version, so there was an issue in initializing scanner. Let's do Trivy-v. Okay. So it's basically installed correctly. So I can exit this, clear the screen. And now this is our Jenkins file. If you run our Jenkins file, this should work. Right. Okay, I see some error here. 2 ticks. Yeah, to delete one of them. Save this. Push changes to GitHub. Git commit. Preview scan. Git push. Changes have been pushed. Refresh this. Okay. Go back to the Jenkins. Build now. That's the Trivy scan command right there. And you can see the results. It's in a tabular form like this. And most of it is being outputted to this file right there. Okay. Now for Trivy, sometimes when you download the vulnerability database once, there's no need for you to keep downloading it because there's a maximum cap on how many times you can download it. Okay, especially when you are testing a pipeline like this where you are still figuring things out. If you constantly download it, it can give you errors sometimes. So in order to stop that error, run this Trivy command for the first time. Okay, you clear the screen here like we did in our Jenkins file. This command is okay. The only thing I would do is let's make this a little bigger. The only thing I will do is I will copy this same command. For the first time, it has already downloaded the database, so I can comment this command out and replace it with the same command, except this time I'll add one more flag to it, and that will be skip update. What this will do is once the database is installed, this should be dash dash. This should be only 2. Once you run the first command that downloads the vulnerability database, this command will not download it anymore. It will always skip the download and just do the scan of our Docker image with the available vulnerability database. All right. Now, if you push changes, use the previous commands that we use, Trivy scan, push. Changes have been pushed. Build now for the 6th time. So that was a success. You see right here, everything still worked. Okay. So anytime you have any issues with Trivy, add this in there, especially for issues downloading the vulnerability database. Now, for the next stage, go to the Jenkins file. The next stage is to push the image to DockerHub. Now for that, I'll create a new environment variable up here, and I'll call it docker underscore hub underscore credential ID. And I'll give it some name. Let's go to DockerHub. This is my DockerHub account. Go to account settings. Go down to personal access token. Generate a new token. Now call this GitOps DockerHub. Dates, let's use 30 days. Read, write, delete. So that is the name that we gave it. We'll just copy this and save it somewhere. Generate. So this is the DockerHub token. Copy it and save it somewhere safe. We'll use that to create a credential inside Jenkins. So let's go to our Jenkins dashboard, manage Jenkins, credentials, global, add credential. And of course, we're using username and password. Username for our DockerHub account is icon C in lowercase letters. Icon C. The password is a token we just created here. And copy this and use it. And for the name, I'm just going to use the same name. GitOps DockerHub. Copy. Same for description. Create. All right, so that is our DockerHub token. Now this is the ID. So I'll just copy this. In my Jenkins file, you remember the DockerHub credential ID environment variable. I'll give it the ID that I just created. Now let's go back down to the image push step. This is it. Now to push, we go to pipeline syntax, Docker. Okay, so you don't see push here. So it's not as direct as compared to docker.build, right? There's no docker.push here. But we can use with credential. You can use docker.with credential, and then we can do the Docker image dot push inside it. Right? Because if you're pushing it to a repository, this repository has a password, which is this token really, that we saved as a credential inside Jenkins. So we need that. What I would do is in the pipeline script here, I'm going to do docker dot with registry, and inside it, the registry is DockerHub. It's https registry dot hub dot docker.com. You can use an environment variable for this too, if you want to. And then credential ID, remember I use this to represent the credential ID, an environment variable. So dollar curly braces is the credential ID. And inside of this registry, I'll open the curly braces, and then I'll do docker.push. So this is gonna be .push, and the tag, let's give it latest. But in order to make it simple, I'm gonna give this Docker image a name. I'm gonna call it Docker image. And so over here, I'm gonna use the same name, Docker image. So whatever image that is built here, I'm calling it this name, and I will push that image. All right, save this, push changes. To refresh the repo. That is the updated version. And the environment variable is also updated right here. By the way, the GitHub repository link is in the description below. So if you want to see the whole code, you can find it there. Okay, let's go back to our dashboard, to our job, build one more time. So that's image build, that's Trivy scan. This is pushing image to DockerHub. All right, push was successful. Let's go to the DockerHub account. By the way, this is the repo. If I refresh this, you see the new latest tag. It was pushed a few seconds ago, which is exactly what we just did. So that is for the Docker push. Okay. Now at this stage, let's clear the screen. If I go to the Jenkins file, we've scanned and we've pushed the Docker image. So our next step is to install ArgoCD CLI. I will just go back. Now, when I do kubectl get namespace, these are the namespaces available. So I'll create a new namespace. So I'll do kubectl, create namespace, and the name I'll give it ArgoCD. So if I list them, see the new namespace. This is just to isolate ArgoCD containers from all the other ones. Now to install ArgoCD in our Minikube or Kubernetes cluster, you use the kubectl apply command in the ArgoCD namespace. And this is a YAML file that we use. Press enter, and this should install ArgoCD files, all the containers, every single thing that it needs. So from service accounts to RBAC files, cluster rule binding, config maps, services, network policies, deployments, all that is installed. Now if I do kubectl get all in the ArgoCD namespace, these are all the things that ArgoCD installed or created. Some of them are not ready yet. Some may take a few minutes. All right, now at this point, you see everything is ready. All of them are ready and up and running. By the way, the ArgoCD server is right here. This is the service for the ArgoCD server. And this is the pod for ArgoCD server. Now we want to access ArgoCD on our browser. And so we need to do something here. I'll just clear the screen. Let's do kubectl get services in the ArgoCD namespace. So these are all the services. Because we want to access it on the browser, we need to expose the ArgoCD server service. Currently, it is a cluster IP, so we can access it. So we need to convert this. Since we are using Minikube, I'm going to change this cluster IP to a node port. So for that, I run the command kubectl edit service, and the service name is ArgoCD server right here. I'll copy this, and it's in the namespace ArgoCD. To edit that, this is the configuration file. So just go to where you see cluster IP. This is the type cluster IP. I will delete this and replace it with node port, and the node port has to be in this way, this spelling, capitalized. Node and port both capitalized. Now save and quit this, and you see the server has been edited. Now if I get the services one more time, you should see that now it's a node port, okay, compared to earlier when it was a cluster IP. And our node port number is 31559. That's the number for our node port. So don't forget, we also need to add this to our security group for our server. So let's go back to EC2 instance, security. Our security group is right here. Edit inbound rules, add rule, and the node port is that. Let's say anywhere IP, and this is ArgoCD node port. Save rules. That's added. Go back to our instances. Okay, so we've added it to our security group. So at this point, you should be able to access it. But since we are using a local Minikube cluster, you can't just access it just like that. We need to port forward it. So first, kubectl port forward -- address. And the address, you can use the public IP address, or in this case, I will use any. So 0000. Then I'm forwarding the service. The name of our service that is on the node port is ArgoCD server. And the node port is 31559. And it's listening on port 80. So :80. And the namespace is ArgoCD. Now, when I run this command, I can't use this terminal anymore because I have to keep it running for me to access ArgoCD on my browser. Right. So open a new terminal. Now cd into downloads. Remember, that's where our keeper is stored. So ssh-i, keeper is GitOps, user is Ubuntu, add the public IP. It's this right here. Press enter. Okay, and we are in the server. So we are in the server twice. So instead of running this command here, I will copy this. And run it in the new terminal instead. This is just the same command I run up here. Get the services. So it's the same thing, same output here. Anyway. All right. So I'll paste the new command here. Press enter. You see that it's forwarding traffic to the node port. Okay. So on our browser, we will need our public IP address. Create a public IP : the node port is 31559. Press enter. Now, ArgoCD uses HTTPS, so it would say that this is a potential risk. But you go to advanced and accept risk and continue, you should still be able to open it. Okay. And you see some movement here. So you are able to get in. Now we need username and password. Now username for ArgoCD is admin as the initial one. If you can change it later. Now for the password, there's a command to get the secret password for your ArgoCD server. Right. So I don't need this command anymore. So Control-C to exit out of that. I'll paste this command here to get secret inside the ArgoCD namespace, and this will get the ArgoCD initial admin password or secret. And this is using base64 encryption. Press this, and you see this content right there. It's your password. Copy it, paste it here as your password, sign in. Now going to save this, and that is your ArgoCD UI. Okay. Now with your ArgoCD UI ready, let's configure our Kubernetes credentials inside our Jenkins. Let's go back to the home directory. If I do ls-la c.kube, this is the file that contains the kube config. Okay. So let's do ls-la.kube, and that is your kube config file. Now, if I cat .kube config, this is our kube config file. But then to use it inside our Minikube cluster, we need to make some changes here and here. So I'll copy this content. Copy everything here. And then I'll open a new terminal. Now this terminal is going to be on my local host. So this will not be connected to the server. I'll go to the downloads directory. And then I'll create a new file. I'll call it, let's say, kube config. Then I'll paste the content that I just copied for kube config in here. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because I need to make some changes to it. And by changes, I mean this actually needs the content of this file to be right here, not the file itself. So I'll do -data for all of them because it takes the data itself. -data. And the last one, the key, -data. With that, let's do the encryption. The first one, I'm gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna use this to generate the command. So cat, paste the location, and I will convert it to base 64 encryption. Remove any word wrappers. Echo. And this is the actual data inside that file, ca.search. Copy this. Where's the file? This is okay. So instead of this, I'll get rid of all of this. Now remember, this is the CA search. Okay. And paste the content here. We'll do the same for the certificate and for the key. Next, let's do this certificate. The client cert. Copy it. Then I'll do the same command, cat the location and pipe it with base 64 encryption. Remove any word wrapper. Echo. This is it. Highlight this whole thing. Make sure you highlight everything, copy it. And that is this file right here. Paste it here. And then the last one is the client key. Copy the location. Cut the location that you just copied. Pipe it with base 64 encryption. -w. Echo. And this is a client key. Copy the whole of this. And then in here, get rid of this. And paste the content there, like that. All right, and then save this. By the way, the file is kubeconfig. All right. Now on our Jenkins, let's go to the dashboard. manage Jenkins, credentials, global, and we are going to create a credential for our Kubernetes cluster. Now, since we are using a kubeconfig file, this will use secret file. Browse and select it from your local host. So you see why I used a terminal from my local machine. Okay. And I believe I did it inside the downloads directory. So go to downloads and the file name is kubeconfig. This is it. Okay. Select it. That's selected. And the name, I'll call it kubeconfig. Create. That's created. Good. Now we can go back to the dashboard. Let's clear the screen here. Let's go back to the Jenkins and open our Jenkins file. Before we add the Kubernetes credential we just created in here, we first need to install ArgoCD CLI. Okay, so let's do that first. Simple command. I'll just paste it in here. Use a curl command. Okay, and then you use this to make it executable. And that will install ArgoCD CLI. Now we need this because we will use ArgoCD commands inside this apply Kubernetes block. Let's now go to the application down here. Just gonna get rid of all of this for now. And I will insert codes in here. All right, let's go back to our Jenkins. Go to configure. Pipeline syntax. Now, over here, look for kubeconfig. Yeah, this is it right here. Server endpoint. Okay. Let me save this file for now. Our server endpoint, you can use kubectl cluster info. This is our server endpoint. Highlight this. Copy it. All right, because we've already provided a kubeconfig file, which is what we'll select here, I don't need to paste the CA site again here. Because normally when you paste it, it's gonna be there will be a lot of stuff in your code, right? You can leave this blank since we've selected the credential. Generate pipeline script, and we have script here. I'm gonna copy this. Then I'll go back to VI Jenkins file. So inside this script, I'll paste the block that I just copied. Let's delete this. All right, so I have kubeconfig, and whatever command that I want to add is going to be inside of it. So now I can use shell with the 3 ticks, and then I can put whatever commands I want to put inside of it. Now the command that I'll put inside it is going to be ArgoCD login. ArgoCD uses this IP address and this port number. Okay. So that is the location. Like this. Of course, you can use environment variables for this to make it nicer. Username. Our username is admin. Password. Now password, remember we ran a certain command earlier to generate it when we were trying to log in. I saved the command somewhere here. I'm going to use $ signed with parenthesis. Now paste the command that I used to generate the password inside of this parenthesis. Now remember earlier, I did mention that ArgoCD uses HTTPS. Now as it stands, we are logging into it using HTTP. So sometimes this will throw up an error. Let's save this for now. Just gonna save it. Now on ArgoCD, let's go to settings. Let's attach our repository. So connect to repo. And this is going to be via HTTP or HTTPS in our case. And our repo is on Git. The project name is its default. Repository URL. Go to the root directory. Copy the URL code here. Paste it in here. The username and password, we don't really need it. Or if you want, you can use, but it's optional really. So it's not necessarily needed. And of course, the password is the token that we created in GitHub. We don't have any TLS certificates. All these are optional. Okay, click connect. And you see that it's connected successfully. So our GitHub repo is connected to ArgoCD. Let's go back to applications and we can create a new app. Now I'm doing this manually before we use the pipeline to kind of sync it or to try to create it too. Application name, let's call this ArgoCD Jenkins. Project name default. Sync policy. Let's make this automatic. Clone resources, self-heal. You can leave this as default. If you can also select other stuff. Repository URL. That's the URL from our repo. Remember, we already saved it there. Revision. A revision is a branch. So that is main. Select it. And the path is in our repository. Our manifest files are found within this within this directory, manifests with an S. So the path is manifests. Okay. Cluster URL is just going to be Kubernetes default. Namespace. Our namespace that we created was ArgoCD. That's the namespace we created on the terminal, if you remember. Okay. And some other stuff that you can still set up. For now, keep the rest as default. Create. Now you can see that it's synced and it's healthy. So this application is working successfully. You see deployment and service. Now if you go to the manifest file, it contains a deployment file right here. By the way, in the deployment file, that's why I pushed it to the same Docker image. This is the same Docker image that we pushed to DockerHub. Okay, icon c/icon-app:\latest, which is this image. And it's the same thing here. If you have to use different name, you have to change this. This is a service file, also exposing on port 3000. So that's why you see my service node app deployment. That's the name of the service, my service, and deployment is called node app deployment. All right, now this is healthy. You see two parts here. In our deployment, see that we have two replicas. So that's why you see two parts currently running in here. Now that this is working correctly, let's try to sync it from our Jenkins file. Let's save this and quit. And then I'm going to do save changes. Hit push. Okay. Changes have been pushed. Let's refresh this. So this is our current state of our Jenkins file. Let's go to our Jenkins. Seems everything is ready now. Apply and save. Now, if you remember, let's clear the screen for a second. Yeah, Jenkins file. So what we are expecting is for the installation of ArgoCD CLI, which is what we need to run this command ArgoCD and whatever that follows. Okay. So if this installation is successful, then we can actually log in using this command. Build now. Since changes have been pushed already. Okay. So you see that there's a failure. But the installation was successful. But then there's an error getting to the end. Now to fix this error, you're gonna add the flag -- insecure. And then we want to use ArgoCD app sync command to sync the application over here. Our app, we called it ArgoCD Jenkins. Copy that, paste it here. kubectl needs to be installed on this container, and it's not. Let's go to the pipeline script again, vi Jenkins file. Just gonna add it to this block, or if you like, you can also log in into the Jenkins container manually and install it from there. So over here, I will install. Now the reason why I need to install kubectl as well is because I need kubectl to get the password. Now, in the whole of this container installation, there's nothing like kubectl. So the kubectl I installed earlier is on this Ubuntu server itself. It's not on the container. So install kubectl and Argo CLI. So for installing kubectl and Argo CLI, I'll paste it in here. So use the curl command, that's the first command here. Just to download the latest release. And then we'll make it executable and we will move it to the user local binary directory as kubectl, right? Which is exactly the commands here. Just made it a little nicer, that's all. Okay, so this will install kubectl and this installs Argo CLI or ArgoCD CLI. Let's save this. Git add, git commit. Let's use the previous configure. Git push. Icon C. Press enter. Let's refresh this. Okay, so this kubectl, ArgoCD CLI. This is ArgoCD login and ArgoCD app sync, and that is the application. Now, don't forget that on ArgoCD, the last sync was made 19 minutes ago. And the last comment we did that was image push. So when we make the changes or when we build the Docker image, some of these things will change. Okay, just to note it. All right, let's go to our Jenkins job. Build one more time. Now you can see that it's a success. Right. So first, it downloaded the kubectl CLI or installed it, and then it installed the ArgoCD CLI. Then it used the secret. So that was the same password that we used, remember. But don't forget to add the -- insecure. This is what helps to get over the fact that ArgoCD uses encryption here, just HTTPS. Then you see the service and deployments seen as healthy. Make some changes to it. You basically sync it, and it's a success. Let's go to ArgoCD. Refresh this. Now, note what I mentioned earlier, the comment and the time. Okay, so when we did the push, git commit, so the comment was ArgoCD configure. That was the last commit we did. And that's the comment you see here and there. And this commit was done a minute ago, which is what we did here just a minute ago. And it has updated this ArgoCD deployment. Clear the screen. Kubectl get deploy. In the ArgoCD namespace, you find a node app deployment. This is it. This is a deployment that we just deployed, and it's ready. You can also get the app or the pod. And these are the two replica pods right there. And of course, you can get the same for the service as well. This is my service. Okay. Since our application is currently running, or the pods are currently running, you're going to try to access it. Now on ArgoCD, if you go to the logs, you see that our application is currently running on port 3000. Now if you want to access it on our browser, we need to allow port 3000 on our server. So I'll go to my security groups, edit it. Now add port 3000. And this is for the node app. Okay. Save it. Now if you go back, now remember from the ArgoCD, we need to run node app.js. So in our terminal, we are inside our repository, and I do ls. In order to run node app.js, as it stands, when I run it, you see that I have an error which says module express cannot be found. Now to solve that, we need to first install npm, as we did inside our pipeline script. We need to install it on the server. So npm install, this should install npm and all the dependencies. Now when I do ls, you see that there is a new directory here called node modules. Now this module contains the express module that we need for this application. Initially, it wasn't here. It wasn't in this directory. But once we run that, now we have two directories, and one of which is node modules. Okay. And so now if I run node app.js, you see that it says server running on port 3000. Since it's running on port 3000, you can go to our EC2, take the public IP address, paste it here, :3000, and you should see cannot get /. But that's because our application listens on the port hello. Let me stop this for now. When I cut app.js, application path is on /hello. So I'll rerun this, and then I'll add /hello. That will show hello world, welcome to Icon YouTube channel, which is the content of our application right here. So you can clearly see that the ArgoCD deployment is working perfectly. The service, this is the replica set. These are the ports. This is the deployment as the service. And everything is working according to plan. I'm going to stop this, clear the screen. Now, if you make any changes to your Docker image, of course, you don't have to use latest. You can use, let's say, an environment variable like build number or build date so that you can easily track it. And then ArgoCD will automatically sync the image that you've created or the new one that you've created. And then you update the Docker image here, right? And the ArgoCD will go ahead and sync it in your deployment to Minikube. All right. Now, the last thing that I want to do is to configure webhooks for our application. I want a situation whereby if I do git push, it automatically triggers GitHub, Jenkins, and ArgoCD all at the same time. So I don't have to go to Jenkins and click on build now before the pipeline builds to deploy to ArgoCD. So just by doing git push on my local terminal, the whole thing is automated. Now to do that, I have to set up GitHub webhooks. So I'll go to my GitHub. This is our repository or our projects that we are currently working on. Go to settings. You see webhooks. Add webhook. Okay. Now we need a payload URL. Now the payload URL is basically http:// the Jenkins UI URL. Copy this. All right, this is double. Let me get rid of this. :8080 and then add GitHub-webhook. That's going to be our payload URL, the Jenkins IP and port, and then /GitHub webhook. Content type is application JSON. Secrets, you can add secrets, but it's not necessary. You can leave it as blank. Enable SSL. Just push event. This means whenever we do a git push, that will trigger this webhook. Now click add webhook. Now that we've added, it's successful. So we will go to our Jenkins, go to our dashboard, go to the project here, configure. Now scroll down to build triggers. So click on GitHub hook trigger for Git SCM, select it. We've created it here. So all we have to do is select it in here, right? Now we can apply and save. Now I'm not gonna hit build now anymore. What I will do is I'll pull out the windows for the ArgoCD on this side. It's gonna squeeze it a little bit. And that of Jenkins on this side. By the way, Jenkins, we have the last build was number 11. And ArgoCD, the last sync is 25 minutes ago. And the comment is ArgoCD configure. All right. Now, what I would do is I'll just make some change. Let's say in the Jenkins file, I'm just going to make a slight change here. Like a space, build and deploy successful. All right, those are the changes I made. I will save this. Git add, git commit. Now I need to give it a new message here. So webhook configured. Right, git push. The username is I can't see. Then the password is a token. Press enter and the push is sent. So you should see a new build start. Let's refresh this. You see the build number 12 has started. You can click on it to track it. As soon as it's done, this will also sync automatically. Let's see. You see it's successful, and now the sync also started and it's done a few seconds ago. And the comment we gave it is webhook configured, which is exactly the git commit comment right. So that is how you would configure ArgoCD to deploy to Kubernetes cluster. Now, of course, there isn't only one way of doing this. There are multiple ways of doing this. One way that I've seen people do it, or which I've actually done it myself in the past too, is to go to the Jenkins file, and instead of just syncing it, you can also create or add more commands to this for the git add, git commit, git push, all of that in here. That is also possible. You can also dynamically change the tag of the image that you build right here. Of course, we are using latest. If you build multiple Docker images, let's say we build the image 3 times, only one of them will be latest, which is the latest one that will have the tag latest. What about the previous 2? So if you want to dynamically change it, you can set this using an environment variable such as build number, so that if you build first time it's 1, you build the second time is 2, and the last build that you do will be latest. But if you build another one after the last one, that one becomes latest, and the previous one will be build number 3 or 4, whatever number that is. Thanks for joining me on this video. By the way, don't forget to do a cleanup. Of course, the ArgoCD, we can easily close the tab here. You can also close this. And more importantly, Docker PS, you need to stop these containers. So first, you need to stop the Jenkins container. And then for the Minikube, you can just use the command Minikube stop. And that should stop it. Next, of course, I can close the Jenkins. And then in here, don't forget to terminate your instance. It's already selected. Go to instance state, stop it or terminate it. In this case, I'm going to terminate it. Click terminate. That should terminate your instance. Let me know any questions you may have in the comment section below, and I'll be reading them. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm a small channel I'm trying to grow, so this helped me to catch on with the number of subscribers, and like and comment and follow for more videos. I'll see you on the next one.